Hi everybody, it's Christina from Pretty Distressed. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about painting and finishing these bunk beds that my husband just built for my son's room. If you are new to my channel, I am a furniture painter and refinisher, and what that means is I'm usually taking things that I find on the cheap or things that I make or things from around my home and I'm making them over into new creations. If you're interested in learning more about furniture painting, please consider subscribing before you leave. It's super easy. All you have to do is click that subscribe button. As always, I will leave a list of all the products and links to them below in the description box. Please know that if you purchase anything through those links, they are affiliate links and I am going to receive a small commission for anything that you buy, but I really do appreciate that. I appreciate your support and it helps keep this channel running. In this project, I'm going to be using Dixie Belle paint as well as one of their top coats. And the video is also in partnership with Beddys, who provided this awesome bedding that goes perfectly with the bunk beds. So if you want to see how I got this completed look for my son's bunk beds, just keep watching. Before I jump into today's project, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about my partner for today's video, Beddys Bedding. You guys, this is a really awesome product. They sent me everything I needed in this one little package. I get 2 pillowcases, 2 shams, and the best part is my fitted sheet, my sheet, and my blanket for the bed are all one piece. This makes it a perfect product for bunk beds because you're really going to reduce the level of bulk you have in your blankets and your sheets. But honestly, my favorite part of this is that my 4-year-old son is going to be able to make his own bed every morning. Beddys makes it really easy because the top blanket is actually zipped on into one piece. So in the morning, he just has to get up, fold this blanket over, grab his little zipper and zip it all the way up to the top and he's done. Beddys is going to give you guys a great deal for watching this video today. At checkout, if you enter the code DISTRESSED20, they're going to give you 20% off your entire order. They have lots of different styles, so go check them out. And now we're ready to jump into the project. My husband recently built these bunk beds for my little 4-year-old. He was still in one of those little toddler crib beds and he was totally grown out of it. So we had been talking about doing bunk beds for him for a long time. My husband finally got a miter saw and some other tools that he needed to make this. And he is just kind of a figure it out and go type of guy. I don't have plans to give you guys. I didn't do detailed filming of him building this. I will link below the blog post that kind of inspired the design, but he just kind of took a look at this design, bought some stuff and figured it out and threw it up, and then in true Joanna Chip fashion, passed the baton on to me to finish the project off. And originally I had a really hard time deciding what I wanted to do. I tried to milk paint it at first, but I'd used this wood filler that is purple when it's wet and then natural when it's dry. And when I put the milk paint over top, because it's a really watery paint, that purple color was reactivated and you could see it all throughout the build, which was horrible. So then I went back to the drawing board. I completely abandoned the idea of doing the milk paint and just decided to paint the entire thing in a really dark gray. So to start off, I am just filling all the holes that were created by the nail gun and the screws that my husband used to build the bed. Like I mentioned earlier, this specific wood filler is purple when it's wet, and then when it's ready to be sanded, it turns a natural color. I had no problem with painting over this. It didn't constitute and turn purple like it did with the stain, but just be warned, I think next time I would just use a normal one instead of this fancy color changing one. Once the wood filler is dry completely, you can sand it all down. Obviously you can do it by hand, but I decided to whip out my orbital sander like I always do because it just makes things go faster. So I used a 220 grit sandpaper just to smooth out all my wood filler. As you can see, I'm wearing my goggles and my respirator mask, which I always wear when I'm sanding to keep all that dust out of my lungs and my eyes. Once all my sanding's done, I'm grabbing a tack cloth and just wiping down the entire piece to get all the dust off before I start painting. So after I abandoned the milk paint idea, I decided to just paint the whole piece. So I'm starting with this bin primer by Zinsser. This is a shellac based primer. And what that means is it's going to cover up the knots in the wood so that I don't see them as much when the paint goes on. And the good thing about putting a primer down before you chalk paint over raw wood is that it's not going to absorb as much paint. You can definitely just go straight in with chalk paint, but you're going to use less paint if you use a primer first. So I'm using this shellac based one. So I'm using just a regular cheap chip brush to put it on so I can throw it away when I'm done, because there is cleanup involved with shellac. I'm also wearing gloves, and I have the window open so that I have a lot of ventilation in there because the stuff's pretty stinky. I was also able to paint this primer right over the milk paint debacle that you see behind me. And I'm painting right out of the can because I knew this was a big piece and I was going to use all of the primer that is in there. If you don't think you're going to use all of it, I would just take out what you need and put it in a container like I normally do. The color I selected for this project is Hurricane Gray by Dixie Belle. This is out of my wheelhouse. It's a lot darker than colors I normally work with, but my husband, as well as Instagram followers, encouraged me to use this. I'm going to be applying it with the mini angle synthetic brush from Dixie Belle. So my prep is very similar to any other videos that you've watched. I'm just shaking it up, putting it in a container because I like to thin my paint out a little bit with a couple of spritzes of water. And if you're going to be doing this, you definitely don't want to work out of the can because it'll contaminate your can. So I always recommend working outside of the can in a container. For this application, I'm going for a smooth finish, so I'm also going to wet my brush down a little bit, and when I'm applying it, I'm going to do strokes with the grain of wood, which means if you can see those little horizontal lines going from side to side, that's the grain. So I'm going to follow the grain pattern as I'm putting on my paint, and that just makes it a little bit smoother. This angled brush is really good for getting in between those cracks, in between the shiplap. This is a synthetic brush, which is going to help with alleviating some of those brush strokes. It's just going to make my finish a little bit smoother. This is a very large project, so I do spray my water every now and then with a few squirts of water and just mix that up to make sure that my paint's not drying out at all. And again, for the smooth finish, it is best to kind of follow the grain of the paint as well as keep your brush strokes going in one direction. The wood that we use for this project has a lot of knots and divots in it, and I didn't want to fill everything completely with wood filler just because that would have taken a really long time. So I'm just pushing paint into those areas that have little holes and little imperfections and just smoothing over so that none of that white primer is coming through. So during this time lapse, you can see that my strategy is just to do one board at a time all the way across. This definitely needed a second coat of coverage, so I thin my second coat out just a little bit more than the first. So say for the first I do like 5 squirts of water. For the second coat I normally do like 10 to 15 squirts of water just to keep it a little bit thinner. I just find that works better for me. This is the same technique that I used on the first coat, just long strokes in the same direction back and forth. 2 coats was enough for the coverage on this, but I did like the way the primer was looking with the white window, so I decided to keep the window white. So I used Dixie Belle's Whitest White, which is called Cotton. I'm using a new brush that I've never tried before. It's called the Zebra Square Brush, and it is specifically designed for windows and ledges. It's really soft, really cool, the shape of it, and it helped me get in this trim without having to tape it off, which was really fun. They sent me a bunch of brushes that I've been testing out, and I actually have 2 sets of these brushes to be giving away in the future, so keep your eyes peeled for them in a new video. I'm definitely having fun trying them out, and I can't wait to share more with you about them. But as you can see, this did an awesome job just filling in that trim without having to tape it off. And to paint the rest of the window off, I just used another Dixie Belle synthetic brush. So you could just use the same brush you were using on the gray portion as long as you wash it out completely and let it dry. To seal this project off, I'm using the Dixie Belle Clear Coat in flat. This is going to give me the same flat finish that I love with wax, but it's going to be a little less labor intensive to put this on than hand buffing in some wax. I'm using the Dixie Belle Premium Chip Brush to apply this top coat. That's what I saw them using on their website, so I thought this would probably be the best way for me to start using it as well. This was my first time working with this, and it did take a little bit of a learning curve, but my technique is I just dip my brush in just the tiniest little bit, probably just like 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. I rub that excess product off, so you really want to work with just a little bit of product at a time, and then rub it completely completely in down to a very thin layer. You don't want to have a lot of white. Like when you put it on, it's really white, but as you rub it in, it kind of turns clear. So you want it to be completely clear. I know that you see white on the edges where I'm applying it right now, but that's actually just my ring light. That's not the product. So I found the best way to use this is just to apply thin layers, and don't go back and rework a section that you've already completed. Just think thin layers, and if you need to go back and fill in holes after it dries, I think that's your best bet. And here's another close-up without the ring light getting in the way, so you can see how it's going to go on in person a little bit better. After it dries for an hour, you can go back in and fill in any holes that you see where you might have missed spots, or you can apply a second coat. I just did one coat, and I'm going to see how that holds up, and if I need to do a second one down the road, I can always do that later. So now that the painting portion is complete, we just needed to finish off the bed with a railing for safety and a ladder so we could get up on the top of the bunk. These are just some decorative industrial pipes from Amazon that we ordered and put together. We had to clean them off and finish them as well, so I'll link those below. The mattresses are from Amazon as well. They're the mattresses that come all folded up in a box, but they were a little bit of a hybrid, so they have springs in them as well, so it's going to help them not sag and bow in the bunk beds. And I've already told you, but I finished this all off with my bedding from Beddys, which I am absolutely obsessed with. So just to remind you what we started off with, a completely blank slate, and here we are with the completed project. Thank you guys for watching this video all the way to the end. This has been one of my favorite projects. It's always a lot of fun to work with my husband. He definitely pushes me out of my comfort zone, but that's a good thing. He just is really talented, and I love that he took the time to do this project with me. My kids are just absolutely loving this bed, especially my son. He feels so cool to have a big boy bed and has had his brother and sister for sleepovers already. And thank you again to Beddys that he can now make his own bed, and just how beautiful it makes the whole bunk bed look. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Send me any questions that you have in the comment box. Follow me on Instagram. Check me out on prettydistressed.com, and I will see you guys next time.